God is the ultimate creative force in the universe. This idea is agreed upon in every major religion and culture, and no matter the identity of God, whether personified as man or woman or many, or not personified at all and discussed instead as an impersonal force, no matter what, one of the fundamental deeds attributed to God is the creation of everything in the cosmos as we understand it to exist. God may be a certain degree of knowable or unknowable based on whatever other attributes the religion or culture in question allows for, but invariably these other attributes never change the fact that the universal term of God ultimately refers to the greatest creative force in the universe, the one responsible, directly or indirectly, for the continued existence of all matter, visible and invisible. If this can be agreed upon, then it will lead us to some very reasonable conclusions about certain riddles that have puzzled the religious everyman for generations, namely the questions of what is evil, what is blasphemy, what is sacrilegious, and even who or what is the enemy with a capital E, of which the lore of every major religion and culture also features to some degree or another, though always allegorically. So for the purposes of this video, I will generally use Judeo-Christian terminology and ideas because these are both what I am most familiar with due to upbringing and what I suspect most of my target audience will be most familiar with due to location. So let's first discuss the relation between God and goodness and their exact opposites, Satan and evil. Satan is more commonly referred to by the religious everyman as simply the devil, for even today among certain church-going circles, I have found it to be the case that occasionally one finds the foolish, fearful attitude that speaking the name Satan is akin to bringing a curse upon the very room one stands in, much like the characters in Harry Potter fear the name of Voldemort. So the trick of these two words, God and the devil, is such a simple one that the typical religious everyman overlooks it. These names are just a crude reworking of the words good and evil. This is why even a small child who knows nothing of the Judeo-Christian mythos will still feel some trace of reverence upon hearing the word God for the first time, and some trace of dread when hearing the word devil. The child already knows the word good because he has been taught by his parents that he ought to be good, and because the word God is only the word good with a single letter removed, the child's brain naturally does the work of subconsciously associating God with good before the nature of God has even been explained and consciously comprehended. Now, the child may not know the word evil, which is of course where we get the word devil, but this presents no obstacle to my case because the child does know the word bad. That is, he knows there is an opposite to good. And the word devil is always spoken by the parent with the same dreadful tone used when they inform the child that he has been bad. Even if this is not always true, it is just as likely that the words God and devil are being introduced to the child at more or less the same time, and that the term devil will be used in such a way that the child's brain can again subconsciously do the association of devil with badness, because he has already subconsciously associated God with goodness. And then these subconscious associations will just then be reinforced as the Judeo-Christian mythos is slowly introduced to and comprehended by the child. So I illustrate this relationship of opposites, of God/goodness and devil/evil, because it is imperative to understand that the world in which we operate is naturally dualistic. One thing always has its opposite. There's always a black and a white, a yin and yang. Now there may be shades of gray too, and there may also be a higher dimension above our ape-like comprehensive skills in which the apparently natural law of dualism does not operate, but neither of those is relevant to this discussion. Like the idea of God as the ultimate creative force, this must be agreed upon in order to move forward. Now, if God is the ultimate creative force above all others, that must mean there is an ultimate creative force. It is a thing that exists, and like all things, it must have its opposite. The opposite to creativity is, of course, destruction. The opposite of growing a tree is chopping it down. The opposite of building a tower is demolishing it. Now, it is at this point that I assume you may guess the direction of this is going to take us to the conclusion that destruction is the opposite of creation, and that if God is the ultimate creator, that must mean the devil is the ultimate destructor. But here I'm going to throw you for a loop because that's exactly not the case I will be making. The act of destruction has a curious functionality. It occurs to me, as it may have occurred in passing to you, that destruction is often merely a form of creation. When one chops down a tree, is he not creating lumber for building or logs for the fire, even as he has also destroyed the life of the tree itself? Has he not created something new via the act of destruction? And when a tower is demolished, does not the explosion create a pile of rubble? Certainly the pile of rubble is a thing that now exists. It wasn't laying there a moment ago when the tower was still standing. So the act of destruction has created something new, even if that new thing doesn't appear to be as useful as the thing that was there before. So if destruction is itself a form of creation, then is it evil? I think certainly this depends upon the scenario in question. Chopping down a single tree for firewood does not strike me as evil, because we assume the man chopping down the tree for firewood is doing so because he wants to keep his family warm during the winter or something like that. And it's not because he feels blind hatred for the tree and wishes to see its life snuffed out just for fun. However, I think only an insane person would argue that destroying the life of a human baby, sorry for the visual, is anything but evil. I mean, yeah, something has been created in place of that baby's life, but that which has been created is nothing good. It's the agony of loss that the parents will feel, and to be frank, it's the body of the baby. That's not a good creation. So it's worth noting then that the act of creation can also be either good or evil. It seems to me that building a house for a man who has nowhere to sleep is a very good thing, but that, building a concentration camp to systematically torture and kill millions of people is a very evil thing. So I'm doing the best I can here to lead you naturally to the following conclusion. Creation is often destruction, destruction is often creation, both can be either good or evil. And it is here that we find the words of the prophet Isaiah to be applicable. In chapter 45, verse 7, he says, speaking as God, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. The point this verse attempts to make is the same that I'm attempting to make. God, the ultimate creative force, also destroys, because to create is to destroy, and to destroy is to create. So therefore, the aforementioned equating of God with goodness and devil with evil is actually a grave mistake on the part of our ancestors. God is not precisely good nor evil, because God, that is the force in the universe which creates all things, is capable of creating good things and evil things. Indeed, he says so himself through the words of the prophet Isaiah. He, admits to that. Now, despite its biblical basis, I have a hard time thinking that this statement wouldn't get me thrown out of the average Christian church, because nobody wants to think about it, But imagine if we said otherwise. How much greater then would the controversy be? If God does not create evil, if he merely allows evil, then are we to say that the devil creates evil? Because that would mean God is in fact not the force in the universe which creates all things, but he only creates some things while the devil creates others. And so that would mean God is not all-powerful, contrary to what any churchgoer off the street will tell you must be true. Now, incidentally, 100 other concerns about the implications of these claims may be coming to your mind at this time. Don't presume that I'm ignoring them. It's just that for the purposes of this video, we're ignoring them, and then maybe at a later date I'll address them. I'm only doing my level best here to illustrate the fact that though God and the devil may be opposites, and good and evil may be opposites, these are just terms. The actual God of the universe has no need whatsoever for the word by which we refer to him. Somebody long ago made the word God out of good and devil out of evil, without taking the aforementioned verse from Isaiah into careful consideration. At least that's my guess. Now, I said my opening statement to lead us to the answers to certain long-held questions, and we're almost there. So now we consider, if God creates both good and evil, and Satan creates nothing, then exactly what is it Satan does? Well, did you know that the witching hour, which is sometimes referred to as midnight incorrectly, it's actually 3 a.m., the witching hour of 3 a.m. is called the devil's hour because suburban American folklore, like The Exorcist and similar media, would have us believe that this is the hour in which the devil most frequently does his dirtiest work. When we examine how this bizarre superstition must have been reached, we can find again a very simple, deceptively simple, code. Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ, was crucified at the third hour, which during those days was 9 a.m. He remained on the cross for 6 hours, which would mean he died at 3 p.m. 3 a.m. is, of course, the inverse of 3 p.m. Also, of course, 3 is also traditionally one of the holiest numbers in the Judeo-Christian mythos because it is immediately associated with the idea of the Trinity, or the Godhead 3 in 1, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. So thus, the witching hour of 3 a.m. was chosen by Satan, at least so the legend goes, as his hour of darkest operation because it mocks God. It mocks a number that God stands for, or rather the number stands for God. So this is what Satan does. He does not do good nor evil, because to do either would be to create, and he is incapable of creation. All he can do is use what God has already created to mock. So Satan is the great warper of things. And this is the answer to the earlier stated questions. What is blasphemy? It is mockery of God. What is sacrilegious? It is the mockery of religion. Who or what is the enemy? Well, naturally, it is whoever or whatever mocks God and whatever God stands for. So now we're in the final stretch. As I'm speaking, it's 2026, and the talk of global headlines continues to be the invasion, because it can be called nothing less, by artificial intelligence into every feasible corner of society, from business to art. Now, I'm an artist by nature and not a businessman, so my interest lies solely with art. So let's consider what the artist does. No matter his medium, he creates. He uses his own mental faculties to do so, and in this way he does, at a especially small scale, exactly what God does. If an artist uses something other than his own mental faculties to create, such as the ideas of another unwitting artist, we call this plagiarism. And the plagiarizing artist is rightfully condemned by all respectful members of the artistic community. And that's the consequence the artist faces for stealing the work of another and passing it off as his own. He's lied. Indeed, he has made something of a mockery of his trade. So now let's consider what generative AI does. No matter its task, it reproduces. It does not create because it is an inorganic machine and it lacks mental faculties. Generative AI is something like an internet search engine. It possesses a certain amount of knowledge given to it by its creators and or its users, and then it reproduces that knowledge into a certain format. For example, it might remix a Wikipedia article into an essay on the same subject. Or it might remix elements of several photographs into one new artificial photograph. It's not created anything, it's only reproduced. Like the plagiarizing artist, it is guilty of lying. At least it would be if it was an organic being. Indeed, it is mocking the very act of creativity by appearing to do so without really doing so. Appears to create without really creating. So as Satan mocks God, generative AI mocks the artist. And by mocking the artist, AI indirectly, or perhaps not so indirectly, who knows, mocks God, the ultimate creative force. Therefore, though AI may or may not be the quote-unquote exact opposite of God, we have already established that the enemy is not God's opposite, it is that which mocks him. So if AI is mocking creativity, it's mocking God, and AI then is the enemy. And it should be an afterthought to mention that the Google company nicknamed its flagship AI Gemini, and that Gemini is the prophesied astrological birth sign of the Antichrist.